Part 1. Invisible Chains. The desert sun scorched the plain concrete building that stood like a forgotten monument in the middle of nowhere. Inside, Yuna's world was nothing more than cold steel and silent walls. She wasn't like any patient or prisoner anyone had ever seen before. Her skin shimmered with a pale blue-green hue that seemed to breathe with its own subtle life. Hyun walked through the sterile corridor, clipboard in hand, his footsteps echoing with practiced indifference. He had seen countless subjects during his 15-year research career, but Yuna was different. Her eyes weren't just eyes, they were windows to something profound, something he deliberately chose to ignore. The metallic restraints weren't just physical barriers, they were symbols of institutional fear. Each thin silver band wrapped around her wrists and ankles told a story of humanity's deepest insecurities, the terror of encountering something truly unknown. Yuna's slender fingers would occasionally twitch, not in rebellion, but in a language no one had bothered to understand. Her containment room was a marvel of clinical design. White walls, temperature-controlled environment, and observation windows that reflected nothing but the clinical emptiness of human curiosity. She had been here for what felt like endless seasons, summers melting into winters, with no connection to the outside world. The research facility wasn't just a building, it was a machine designed to dissect the unknown. Hyun and his team saw Yuna as a specimen, a collection of biological curiosities to be measured, tested, and catalogued. They didn't see her trembling breaths, the silent tears that sometimes rolled down her ethereal cheeks, or the complex emotions that rippled beneath her unusual skin. Sometimes, during quiet moments between researchers' shifts, Yuna would make soft sounds, not cries but something between a hum and a whisper. These sounds carried memories of a world far different from this sterile room, a world with landscapes of crystal mountains, skies that changed colors with emotional currents, and connections between beings that humans couldn't comprehend. Her body told stories that no scientific instrument could decode. Subtle color changes in her skin were like a language, communication layers that went beyond human understanding. But here, in this facility, those nuanced communications were reduced to mere data points on a clinical chart. Hyun would pass by her containment area multiple times daily, his eyes purposefully avoiding direct contact. To acknowledge her as more than an experiment would mean challenging everything he had been trained to believe. Scientific objectivity, he told himself, meant emotional detachment. The restraints weren't just physical, they represented a deeper imprisonment of imagination, of human inability to embrace the truly unknown. Each metallic band was a testament to fear, to the overwhelming human tendency to control and categorize rather than understand and connect. Yuna's presence was an uncomfortable reminder of how limited human perception could be. In a world obsessed with defining boundaries, she existed as a living question mark, challenging every established scientific narrative. Her soft whimpers weren't expressions of physical pain, but of profound loneliness. A loneliness that transcended species, a universal language of isolation that resonated in the quiet spaces between human indifference and her silent existence. As another day ended in this windowless world, Yuna continued to breathe, to exist, to hope. Her story was just beginning, waiting for someone brave enough to look beyond the clinical labels and see the sentient being behind the restraints. The facility continued its daily rhythm, unaware that within these walls, a narrative was brewing. A story that would soon challenge everything they thought they knew about life, intelligence, and connection. Hyun walked away, his footsteps fading, leaving behind only the soft, almost imperceptible breathing of a being who carried within her the mysteries of an unknown universe. Would you like me to continue with the next part in a similar engaging and human-centric narrative style? Part 2. Silent Desperation. The memories of her homeworld flickered like distant dream fragments in Yuna's mind. She remembered colors that didn't exist in human perception, landscapes that breathed, skies that sang, and connections between living beings so intricate that individual consciousness blended like water. Her planet hadn't died. It had transformed. Destruction wasn't a sudden explosion or a catastrophic event. It was a slow, painful transition triggered by internal conflicts that tore through their collective consciousness. Imagine a world where every emotional ripple could reshape physical reality. That was her home. When the final breakdown occurred, it wasn't just buildings that crumbled, but entire emotional ecosystems. Yuna carried these memories like invisible wounds. Each passing day in this sterile facility felt like another layer of her identity being stripped away. The researchers saw her as a collection of biological anomalies, strange skin pigmentation, unusual neural responses, metabolic patterns that defied standard scientific understanding. But she was so much more. Her communication attempts were subtle and complex. A slight shimmer in her skin could translate entire emotional landscapes. A particular rhythm in her breathing might describe generations of cultural history. Yet the humans around her remained frustratingly oblivious. Dr. Hyun and his team would observe her, their eyes scanning instruments, never truly seeing her. They recorded data points, heart rate, skin temperature, neural activity, but missed the living story right in front of them. To them, she was an experiment, a curiosity to be documented and potentially understood through cold clinical lenses. The isolation was suffocating. Imagine being surrounded by people who look at you but never truly see you. Every day, Yuna watched human researchers move about their routines, speaking languages she partially understood, but could never fully communicate within. Her memories of home became her only comfort. She would recall vast communication networks, where thoughts traveled faster than light, where emotional states were shared instantaneously, where individuality and collective consciousness existed simultaneously. Here in this small room, she was reduced to silence. The facility's protocols were designed with rigid human assumptions. Every observation, every test was framed through a narrow understanding of intelligence and communication. They had sophisticated equipment that could detect microscopic changes but lacked the fundamental ability to recognize a different form of sentience. Sometimes during quiet night shifts, Yuna would attempt to communicate through intricate skin color changes and subtle body movements. These were complex narratives about her civilization's history, its philosophical understanding of existence, its technological achievements. But these sophisticated communications were dismissed as random biological responses. Her spirit wasn't broken, but it was certainly bending. The constant clinical observations, the lack of genuine connection, the sterile environment, all of these slowly eroded her hope. Yet, a core of resilience remained. She understood that communication wasn't just about language, but about genuine connection. The researchers saw patterns they could measure, but missed the living story right before their eyes. Each test, each observation was another brick in the wall of misunderstanding. They collected data points, but failed to recognize the sentient being sharing the same physical space. Yuna's world had been about harmony between individuals, between species, between physical and emotional realms. Here, in this human facility, everything felt fragmented, isolated, categorized. Her existence had been reduced to a scientific curiosity, her rich cultural history compressed into clinical reports. But hope, that universal language that transcends species, still flickered within her. She believed that someday someone would look beyond the data, beyond the strange biological markers, and see her, truly see her. As another day passed in silent desperation, Yuna continued to exist, to remember, to hope. Her story was far from over. Would you like me to continue with the next part in a similar engaging narrative style? Part 3. An unexpected connection. Jay wasn't like the other researchers. Where they saw numbers and data, he saw stories waiting to be understood. At just 27 years old, he was the youngest research assistant in the facility, and his curiosity burned with a different intensity. That particular evening started like any other. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a clinical glow across the observation room. Jay was reviewing routine monitoring logs, his fingers dancing across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. But something felt different tonight. Yuna had been sitting motionless for hours, But her stillness wasn't emptiness. It was a kind of living silence that seemed to pulse with unspoken narratives. Most researchers would have dismissed her as just another subject, but Jay noticed the subtle details others overlooked. Her eyes weren't blank, they were deep pools of experience. Each blink seemed calculated, each movement deliberate. When she shifted her hand, it wasn't a random muscle twitch, it was communication. That night, Jay saw something extraordinary. As he adjusted the monitoring equipment, Yuna's skin began to change colors, not randomly but in a pattern that seemed too precise to be accidental. Soft blues blending into gentle greens, creating a language more complex than any spoken words. He remembered his grandmother's stories about understanding beyond words. She used to tell him that true communication wasn't about sound, but about connection. Those childhood memories suddenly felt profoundly relevant. The facility's standard protocols never accounted for this type of interaction. Researchers were trained to observe, record, and categorize. But Jay was different. He saw a living being trying desperately to bridge an impossible communication gap. His colleagues would laugh if he shared his observations. Dr. Hyun, the lead researcher, had already warned him about wild interpretations multiple times. But something inside Jay refused to be silenced. He started a secret journal, documenting every unusual interaction. Subtle skin color changes, rhythmic breathing patterns, intricate hand movements. Each entry was a piece of an unfolding mystery. He knew he was treading dangerous professional ground, but the pursuit of understanding was more important than career safety. Yuna seemed to sense something different about Jay. When he entered the room, her entire demeanor changed. Her breathing would become more rhythmic. Her skin would display more complex color variations. It was as if she recognized a potential ally in this sterile environment. One particular evening changed everything. During a routine monitoring session, Jay noticed a specific sequence of skin luminescence that matched mathematical precision. It wasn't random. It was a structured communication attempt. The patterns suggested complex mathematical principles that went beyond human understanding. His background in advanced mathematics and computer science suddenly became crucial. Each color shift, each subtle movement began to look like a sophisticated communication protocol. Yuna wasn't just a subject. She was potentially communicating an entire knowledge system. The implications were staggering. If he could crack this communication method, it would revolutionize everything humans understood about intelligence, communication, and potentially extraterrestrial life. But Jay knew the risks. Scientific community could be ruthless with unconventional theories. He would need irrefutable evidence, meticulously documented observations, and an approach that would withstand intense scrutiny. His personal mission had begun. Somewhere between scientific curiosity and genuine empathy, Jay had discovered something remarkable, a potential bridge between two completely different forms of intelligence. Yuna watched him, her luminescent eyes holding a mixture of hope and caution. For the first time since her arrival, someone was truly trying to understand her. An unexpected connection had just begun. Would you like me to continue with the next part in a similar, engaging narrative style? Part 4. Breaking Institutional Silence. The research facility was a fortress of skepticism, where unconventional ideas went to die. Jay knew this better than anyone. His tiny workspace, tucked away in the facility's basement, became a secret sanctuary of discovery. Every night after official hours, he would meticulously review the recordings of Yuna. Rows of monitors displayed her subtle movements, skin color transitions, and breathing patterns. What looked like random biological responses, to others seemed like a complex language to him. His initial breakthrough came unexpectedly. During a late-night session, he noticed a specific sequence of skin color changes that perfectly correlated with mathematical prime number progressions. It wasn't just a coincidence. It was a structured communication system, more sophisticated than any human language. Colleagues like Dr. Park would laugh during lunch breaks. Another wild theory from young Jay, they'd joke, their dismissive chuckles echoing through the sterile corridors. But Jay had something they didn't: genuine curiosity and an open mind. He began developing a translation matrix. Imagine trying to decode a language where colors, subtle body movements, and rhythmic breathing were grammar and vocabulary. Each discovery was like solving an impossible puzzle. His personal sacrifices were significant. Weekends disappeared into research. Social life became a distant memory. His parents worried about his increasing isolation, but Jay was driven by something larger than personal comfort. The translation method started taking shape. He created complex algorithms that could potentially interpret Yuna's communication patterns. It wasn't just about understanding her words, but comprehending an entirely different consciousness framework. Secretly, he recorded everything. Hidden. Cameras, specialized monitoring equipment, advanced spectral analyzers. Jay transformed his small workspace into a mini research hub. Each recording was meticulously labeled, cross-referenced and analyzed. Dr. Hyun, the facility's lead researcher, remained skeptical. "Jay, you're chasing shadows," he would say, his tone a mixture of professional condescension and mild concern. But Jay had heard such warnings before and knew that every scientific breakthrough started with someone being called crazy. The institutional silence was deafening. Research facilities like these were designed to categorize, not understand. They wanted data points, not living stories. Yuna was more than a subject to Jay. She represented an entire unexplored dimension of intelligence. His translation method began revealing fascinating insights. Yuna's communication wasn't just about exchanging information, it was a holistic expression of experience. Each color shift could represent emotional states, historical memories, and complex philosophical concepts. Weeks turned into months. Jay's dedication never wavered. He understood that breaking institutional silence required more than just scientific evidence. It needed persistence, passion, and an unwavering belief in something larger than established narratives. The risks were enormous. One wrong move could cost him his research position, professional reputation, and potentially future opportunities. But some discoveries are worth more than personal safety. His computer became a treasure trove of unusual data. Complex graphs, color-coded charts, and intricate algorithms filled multiple hard drives. Each byte of information was a potential key to understanding a completely different form of intelligence. Yuna seemed to sense his efforts. During monitoring sessions, her communication became more deliberate. It was as if she recognized Jay's genuine attempt to understand her. Her skin would display more complex patterns, her movements more nuanced. The institutional walls were slowly crumbling. What started as a seemingly impossible quest was transforming into a potential scientific revolution. Jay was no longer just a research assistant. He had become a bridge between two completely different forms of consciousness. His journey was just beginning, and the most significant challenges were yet to come. Would you like me to continue with the final part of the story? Part 5, Path to Freedom. The hearing room felt electric with anticipation. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, casting long shadows across polished wooden surfaces where government officials, scientific experts, and legal representatives sat in tense silence. Jay's hands trembled slightly as he prepared to present. Years of meticulously collected research, his entire career, his reputation, and more importantly, Yuna's future, hung in the balance. The stack of documents before him represented more than just scientific data. They were a testament to human potential for understanding. When he began speaking, the room fell completely silent. Each carefully chosen word painted a picture of Yuna not as a specimen, but as a sentient being with a rich, complex history. His presentation wasn't just scientific, it was deeply human. He revealed Yuna's origin story, a civilization that existed beyond human comprehension. Her planet wasn't destroyed by traditional warfare, but by a complex emotional and philosophical conflict that reshaped entire ecological systems. It was a narrative so profound that it challenged everything humans understood about intelligence and existence. The translation matrix Jay had developed became the key. Through intricate color patterns and subtle body movements, Yuna's entire species' history unfolded. It was a story of advanced emotional intelligence, of connections that transcended physical boundaries, of a civilization that understood consciousness in ways humans were only beginning to imagine. Legal experts initially approached the hearing with skepticism, but as Jay presented evidence, something remarkable happened. The cold, clinical atmosphere transformed into one of genuine wonder. Scientists who had spent decades studying extraterrestrial possibilities were witnessing a breakthrough beyond their wildest imagination. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a renowned xenobiologist, became an unexpected ally. Her reputation lent credibility to Jay's findings. "This isn't just about scientific discovery," she stated during the hearing. "This is about recognizing intelligence in its most profound form." Public awareness grew rapidly. Media outlets picked up the story, transforming it from a scientific curiosity to a global conversation about empathy, understanding, and the nature of consciousness. Social media exploded with discussions, debates, and a growing movement supporting Yuna's rights. The hearing wasn't just a legal proceeding, it was a moment of collective human evolution. For the first time, humanity was being asked to expand its understanding of intelligence beyond traditional human-centric perspectives. Yuna sat quietly during the proceedings, her skin displaying a complex array of colors that Jay now understood as emotional responses. She wasn't just a subject being discussed, she was an active participant in her own story. When the final verdict came, the room erupted in a mixture of applause and stunned silence. Yuna was granted not just freedom, but legal recognition as a sentient being. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just about one individual, but about redefining humanity's understanding of life itself. Legal documents were signed, protections were established, and a new chapter of human extraterrestrial communication began. Yuna would be allowed to share her knowledge, to contribute to human understanding, to exist as her true self. Jay watched with tears in his eyes. His journey wasn't about personal achievement, but about creating a bridge of understanding. He had transformed from a young, passionate researcher to someone who had fundamentally changed human perspective. The facility that once held Yuna as a prisoner would now become a research center for cross-species communication. What started as an isolated clinical environment was now a beacon of hope and possibility. Yuna's first steps outside the facility were broadcast globally. Her movement wasn't just physical, it was symbolic. Each step represented generations of silenced voices, of misunderstood intelligence, of hope transcending biological boundaries. As cameras captured her emergence, the world watched a new definition of freedom unfold, not just for Yuna, but for humanity's collective understanding of life itself. The journey was complete, but a new chapter was just beginning. Would you like me to refine or elaborate on any part of the story?